So, a very good evening, dear participants. Thank you for joining in for yet another episode on HR Speak.
Whatever organization you're working for, you are actually able to contribute a delta. There are so many HR professionals in the world. There's so many, legal professionals in the world. There's so many financial professionals. In every organization, there are supply chain professionals, many, right? But why only few people will succeed? And I connect that to HR, as one of the key function which drives that human excellence, right? And that human excellence is not just only the HR professional's job, but it's also the business leader's job. And they work in tandem. And I keep telling, in my leadership sessions, that for any organization, the business leaders and HR leaders are two sides of the same coin. So one have to constantly come together and create that environment, the ecosystem in an organization where the employees thrive in that organization. So I'm very passionate in that sense in terms of looking at how as an individual, as a professional, you have to strive for excellence, your own individual excellence, so that you can actually deliver real value into an organization, and people value your contributions. So try to leave a mark in whatever you are delivering. Don't think it's just a job you are paid for and you're coming and just going back home. So you need to be passionate in terms of whatever you're doing and how you look at things very differently than others, and what are the creativity you bring to the table. So there are many aspects I've seen, in terms of an experience myself. If people can just focus on 4 elements, one is focus on just results, outcomes. That's a critical element. People respect you for what you're delivering, not about what you're talking. So first important fundamental aspect is any organization, irrespective of the level you are, fundamental aspect for any professional to thrive is the individual is focusing on outcomes, not tasks. The second critical element is to thrive in a professional career is how the individual is creative or innovative with solutions. So there are an organization, I see people who create problems. There are an organization, same organization, you see people creating solutions. So be on solution-oriented approach or mindset. You see a lot of people also create a lot of problems in the organization. Don't be on that side. So the second important element I advise people is be innovative, be creative. The third important focus area for anyone, irrespective of whether you're HR or any other profession, is be a continuous learner. If you don't learn and add value to yourself, you can't really add value to others. So the third important pillar is the element of constant learner. And this is the kind of quote I wrote in one of my books. Life is a continuous learning. Keep learning continuous. I repeat for the audience. Life is a continuous learning. Keep learning continuous. That's the only mantra which driven me to reach where I am today at that young age. And these 3 pillars, on top of it, the fourth and most important pillar is the focus area is your relationships. Don't forget how to build a meaningful relationship. People build relationship always thinking that, oh, that person might be helpful in the future. Let me make a friendship. Those friendships are useless friendships. So in my whole career, I focused on building a trusted relationships. So in any profession, one have to really keep in these 4 fundamental elements of one, always be result oriented, deliver the delta to the organization you're working with passionately. Hurdles will come, people will pull you down, but ignore it and focus on it. Second, as I mentioned, be creative, be as a solution oriented. Don't work about being a problem creator. People should not see you as a problem creator. That means people will never come to you. The third important I mentioned, keep an ongoing learner. Be the learner for your life. People will respect you for your knowledge. Fourth important, as I mentioned, relationships are key for your success. People working for you have to respect you as an individual, not as a leader or as a position. So work towards it and see that you become a more of an inspiring for individual or a leader, whatever title you have. But those are fundamental elements. How I have transitioned in terms of where I started in my career, taking up always a challenging role, which I never did in the past. So I'm really passionate in terms of that people focus, which I preach, but I also follow. And that's what I'm pulled into various forums on advisory boards. I'm also part of the FICCI. You all know FICCI. I'm also co-chair for startups and innovations. I'm driving this agenda with the government and other education institutes. I go and speak in various universities, right? And I also coach a lot of leaders in various organizations just to be how to be more excellent. And these are not a kind of difficult things, but it all depends on what you choose to do in your life, where you want to focus your time, and that all matters. So with that, Sweata, back to you. I just given a kind of high level view in terms of what I am and what I follow in terms of my whole thinking and what I do.
Thank you so much for that. And also, considering the three pillars of today's discussion, which is, I'm going by the third pillar, which is learning continuous. And with that, we want to take this a step further into the topic for today. So, keeping learning continuous, how will the HR role evolve in the future of analytics, in the future of HR role, considering the change that has happened, considering what we have gone through, the large pandemic, the great resignation, integration of super teams, the talent development around that, creating life cycle journeys of employees, creating hooks and rewards for them, engaging the learners and engaging the employees in the journey in an organization. So they find a career path in the organization and don't tread elsewhere. What would the HR role look like and how would it be different from the yesteryears, if I may call them?
So to me, HR is all about ability to create a culture for employees to thrive and experience of learning. I think irrespective of whatever happens, the role of HR will evolve around how you create a culture for employees to thrive and how you are able to give an experience of learning. I'll give an examples in terms of how various organizations are evolving and how the talent is changing, because you all are very much familiar with how the future of work, future of workforce, and future of workplace are changing, and they're changing drastically. So if you look at the millennial workforce which is coming, and earlier when people used to look at the profiles of candidates, they used to look at, oh, do you have a multinational brand on your profile? And are you working for big brands? Your weightage of your profile used to be much more. Now the young generation is not looking at joining a big companies. They're joining a lot of good startups, where the startups have a meaningful purpose. They're passionate about technology. They're not going to sit in office and do some transactional work. They want to use their education more meaningfully. A lot of people are doing, very creative courses. Initially, when we started 20 years back, the career, it's more of very limited options, right? Either you are a commerce, you are a arts, very simple things. But within commerce, you have multiple options now. Each of opportunities are very, very varied. And if you have to attract that kind of talent, because those are the people who are going to be needed by organization. So as a HR, we need to start thinking ahead. How do you attract that kind of talent? Which means you need to redesign your own whole org structures. For example, majority of the organizations right now are more of a pyramid structure, right, where the base is large and very lean at the top. But those structures are evolving into kind of octagonal structures, right? So, which means the organizations is not more of an hierarchical. Organizations are now evolving into more collaborative structures. Doesn't matter where your reporting lines is into, what kind of role and how flexible are you able to drive it. Most of the organizations have to understand that with this change in future of work and workforce, and you as an HR professional also experience, to drive any change in some organizations is very, very difficult. The reason why it is because lot of people who work in that organization, either you have a rigid people or a rigid processes. And I categorize various companies in three categories, right? If you see various organizations you work through your careers, there are three types of organizations. The first category of organization is, I categorize them as rocks. The second second kind of organization is pebbles, and third kind of organization is sand, which means you need to first understand what kind of environment are you operating. As a HR professionals, how do you convert these rocks into pebbles and the pebbles into a sand? Which means any change you want to drive, how smoothly can you enable that change? So HR professionals have to closely work with the business leaders and keep on educating. For you to educate them, you need to continue to educate first. What is happening in the business? What is happening in the talent space? And how do you bring in these two together? So those are the things becomes very, very critical to understand how organizations are evolving and how complex it is becoming day in, day out, with a lot of challenging and very people talk about VUCA world. It is no more a VUCA world. It's much, much challenging than that. So I think people are coming out of the VUCA world, and it is very, very difficult. And as a business leader, if you don't understand those context of what kind of organization you're working, and I've seen a lot of great talent and experienced people, leaders, get frustrated when they join that organization because they don't understand what kind of organization or environment they joined. Have they joined an organization which is a rock, other organization which is a pebble, or it's sand? Because the speed of execution in those organizations is very different. So it is important that as a HR professional to understand what kind of organization it is and how do you really enable it to see that the employees are able to thrive and employees able to make a meaningful contribution and win in the market. Because at the end of the day, the success of organization is the winning in the market.
Being result oriented.
Correct.
So now I'm coming to the first two pillars, which we spoke about: result orientation and solution centric. And these also become critical dimensions for organizations, having considered that there was a slop in business, revenue, top line, and now there is a speed in operations, speed in revenue generation, due to which the contribution becomes very, very important at every level. So how do we, in that case, through analytics, ensure that the talent is being nurtured, the talent is engaged, the talent is productive, and it all leads to gainful retention?
Yeah. So I think for the talent engagement, the first important aspect is to understand the business you are into. And every business is very different. So for example, I worked in a consulting firm, EY, which is very different from the manufacturing medical device, which I worked. Medical device company, and Boston Scientific is a medical device company, if people don't know. I'm coming to some of the products what we produce are like stents and pacemakers and many of those products. So this is a very highly regulated industry, as you know. So you need to assess what kind of industry and what kind of environment are you operating. And you know, to connect that with what kind of talent you need. For example, most of the time what happens is People before understand doing any HR analytics have to first understand the business context, right? Lot of people, what they do is they always try to be best in class. And I keep advising people that don't focus on best in class. First understand your best in context. What is the context of your organization? What is the need of the hour? Because every organization context is very different. So first you need to understand whether you are in insurance industry or a financial services or a manufacturing or an IT industry, whatever that industry, first understand the business, how it operates. Most of the time what I see, HR doesn't add value much is when a business leader will come to you and say that this is a job description, you please hire this kind of person. I don't look HR people probing some interesting questions. For example, if the business leader want to hire a senior leader for a position, right? So the HR leader should probe them whether you need that leadership position to just manage operations or just a service delivery. Or do you need a person there, a leader, who is not only operation focused, but also strategic? And the third category is completely strategic, where he will take the organization, or she or he will take the organization in altogether different transformation journey. So based on that, you need to look at the talent, right? And you rarely find a combination of all three. So if you want to maintain your status quo of your business, who can also drive efficiency and effectiveness, that skill is very different. And there are skills that you need to look at as a HR professional who are strategic and who are transformational. So these are various levels at which you look at the talent, and you have the ability to suggest to the business leaders. But you'll be able to do that when you know the competitors. You need to know the competitive talent in the market, and you know what is the competition you're dealing with. So that business context becomes very critical. If not, I mentioned two things: the talent and technology. These are two powerful tools. As a HR professional, if you really need to, build a great organization, you need to understand how the talent and technology is evolving. If you don't understand those two elements and link that to the business, then the winning in the market for that organization becomes very difficult. You're on mute, Sweata.
Yes. So on account of that, now that in the HR role perspective, I need to determine these spaces to engage the talent in the organization. How do I go about taking the understanding of the numbers with people, which I started by saying that, today's session is going to be about the head and heart. So while people is the heart element of an organization, and as you were giving me example of the pacemaker and how it sends signals to the doctor that the patient is going to get a heart attack in the next 10 or 15 minutes. That is future. I mean, the doctor can come even before time because he's got a predictive information telling him that, listen, this is going to happen. And how do then we play with data and analytics?
So in the HR context, I think that's where you need to do the pulse check, right? How engaging is employees in that organization? And that's a critical role. Usually most of the metrics I see are more transactional metrics in an HR, right? So I think we should move away from not just a transactional metrics, but into more of, four important elements. So you need to look at a data from a transactional metrics to more business driven metrics. You also have to move from a reporting into analytics. You need to create, things from a dashboards to decision boards. You need to look at, most of the HR spend a lot of time in policy standardization. Change that mindset from a policy standardization to policy relevance. Because there are policies in organization I've seen which are 10 years old, 15 years old policies, which may not be relevant in the current environment. So look at not a policy standardization, look at metrics in terms of policy relevance. Move away from frameworks to flexible works. So you have to look at in terms of the potential and performance in a grid where you're looking at what are the bad hires in the organization. Are you having the right hiring? What are the kind of dysfunctional engagement in the people? Who are your high potential? Who are your stars in the organization? And I always categorize employees into kind of three categories. There are employees which are like are very low engaged. They just come to the office because they have a job, very low engaged. The second category of employees are sitting on the wall. They either neither low, they'll just do exactly what they're said. They don't have any passion. They just perform what they're asked to do. That is the second category. And the third category is high potential. They're full of energy in the organization. They're very passionate about what they want to do, and they keep on experimenting and want to excel in terms of high posts. So you need to position your employees. Who are the low engaged employees who are just sitting on the fence, whether they can fall either way, and how can you take out on the other side, and how do you keep your high potential who are full of ideas, who wants to execute, who wants career very fast. So gone are the days. These days people come to me and every 1 year I spend 2 years in the organization, 3 years in the organization, 4 years now, where is my promotion? And I keep educating them that number of years doesn't define your promotion. That's the biggest challenge in the current workforce. They have very limited patience in that sense. People need fancy titles in terms of their designations. And then money obviously is an other decision maker. So one have to really see and how do you design an organization and keep the talent engaged and have that pulse. So if you, as a HR person, if you ask, your business leader asks you in terms of what is your pulse of the organization? How many people fall under these categories? Those are meaningful insights versus creating a HR dashboard giving, or we hired X number of people in 30 days. That's fine. Okay, you are meeting your target. That's fine. You're hiring. And it's all about looking at those old age policies. I mean, especially, companies who are legacy companies. There are policies which are so old, no one even looked into it, right? Whether it is an education policy, whether the policy related to some employee benefits, anything, those are not relevant right now, given it is 20 years old or 10 years old or even 5 years old, because the world is changing very fast. So as a HR professionals, you need to look at how do you look at the policy relevance, not policy standardization. I've seen a lot of HR projects looking at, we have to standardize our policies. I'm saying as a business leader, focus on policy relevance first. Is it relevant to the current talent pool to really attract? What is that you have to really look into? What kind of business metrics you have to look into? And how do you segment or give insights to the business? What kind of talent is sticking to your company? Is it a tier 1 talent or tier 2 talent or tier 3 talent? You can hire people from tier 1 cities, tier 2 cities, tier 3 cities. But where are you really hiring people from? So these all things become very critical in terms of how you really look at the whole talent aspects, and how do you build your analytics where they are more of insights rather than just a data. So don't throw numbers at business leaders. Put some analytics behind it, and those analytics has to be where the business leaders along with you are enabling those decisions.
So to help us understand a little deeper, if I would request you to share some examples or experiences in the past where you have used analytics to give a story to business rather than just show a dashboard saying that, okay, so much has attrited or so much has been hired. What was the story like?
So, for example, as I mentioned just now, the story I requested my HR business partner is look at what kind of talent is sticking with us. So we have, when we do our campus recruitment, you can always go for a tier 1 colleges or universities. tier 2 colleges and tier 3 colleges. So
Mhm.
you need to look at first identifying what kind of business processes do you have in the organization, because the IT talent is very different. We have a huge R&D. Again, R&D talent is very different. And there is a finance talent. We also have analytics and kind of automation. So you need to look at, what kind of talent is sticking with you, and what kind of talent is, because a lot of talent you hire, but talent retention becomes very challenging. So you need to look at, and I request the HR folks to really analyze the data and come to me as a business leader. What places, people you're hiring are sticking to you and also are able to really learn quickly. Sometimes when you attract and pay more from a tier 1 colleges, their aspirations are very, very, very fast. So it becomes very difficult to retain them. So versus a tier 2 or a tier 3. So that is where I think I look for those business insights, right? That is one way. Second, in terms of the pulse, as a requested pulse of the organization, categorize that pulse through various, whether you're organizing events, how many are actively participating in those events. That will give you a sense, how many are in that mid category or a low category and the third category. So those pulse of information really helps in terms of what kind of things you need to do. For example, post-COVID, when every organization is trying to bring back employees to your organization, that is the biggest task for every leader, because people are so used to sitting at home at their own comfort and doing things now, and sitting in their hometowns, right, where they don't need to pay additional rent. The cost of living is low, but you are paying them a salaries at a high city, right? For example, in Gurgaon, that's where we are, and I need to attract and people to come back. We need to have a different ways to attract them. Mandate is one way, but mandate always not going to work, right? Then a lot of people will leave too. So you need to look at, I asked my HR team to really look at how do you really get that pulse check in terms of how many people are really interested in coming back to the base location. That has been a very, very big challenge for all of us as leaders, right? So that pulse check, the sense check metrics are more relevant. And sometimes as you hire the talent, it also happens is that you tend to always hire from the same organization. So you don't want to replicate an X organization into your organization. So you need to be very careful how you're distributing your hiring strategy, right? So you can't have same people coming from a same organization, because you have friends in those organizations you refer, and you tend to hire more people. How do you balance your diversity? So one of the metrics the HR can really help is diversity. Diversity doesn't mean that just only female diversity, right? It can be also, within India is huge, the regional diversity, right? You are present in North India doesn't mean that you need to have only all North Indians. How do you attract talent from the southern part of India, the eastern part of India, the western part of India? So these are the insights what as a HR professionals can create those metrics. Your talent landscape, where is the biggest talent coming from? What kind of talent is staying with your organization? What kind of talent is leaving your organization? So these becomes very important elements in terms of having meaningful dialogue. And that is where, how do you add value to those numbers? That's where the business leaders will start appreciating.
Thank you so much for that. So before I go out for the next question, I would request the coordinator, chapter coordinator, to open up the chat box so that participants can now start putting in their comments, questions, any specific question relating to the role of HR in the evolving world that we are thriving. And along with that, what could be the analytics role in bringing in the talent engagement in it? Put those questions, and meanwhile, I will go ahead with a sequence of my questions which I have, and then take up those questions from the chat box as we do as a practice in the HR Speak. So a continuation from our discussion on throwing up the right data and curating a story out of that, and building the bridge between the talent and the organization becomes a focal point for the HR to have a role. So, what would be the top of the mind tools that can be used, or are those predictive tools for understanding or quickly guessing who would be the attriting population, or which would be the better population to hire for a larger stickiness in the organization? So, what is your recommendation there, sir?
So there are many tools in the market. If you go and whether it is a Tableau or Power BI and so many, right? What I would suggest is don't focus on tools. Tools today, you use an X number of kind of a platform, and there is that platform is competing with another interesting platform. So the platform keeps on changing.
Correct.
So what is important is, and this is what I keep suggesting people, is focus on understanding people. Understanding technology is easy. Understanding people is very difficult. So focus on understanding people, and then that will guide you in terms of, what technology do you need to get these analytics, right? If you hire a smart analytics guy or a data analyst guy, they will tell you what kind of data do you really have. The biggest struggle is not identifying a tool. The biggest struggle in organization currently is lack of good data. A lot of companies don't have one single frame of truth. Because if you ask two people to prepare the same data, they'll come with different numbers because they're pulling from different tools. And that confuses the business leaders, right? So first, as HR leaders, you need to see that how clean your data, right? Do you have a single version of truth? So when you focus on that, whatever tool you bring in, that becomes very easy. So, and then you'll be able to have a meaningful discussion with the business leader. And what happens most of the time is when I see in my career, I've seen various different HR leaders. There are some HR leaders have great respect and some not much because they just speak and may not make sense. But some HR leaders don't know what they're dealing with. And some HR leaders are really business oriented. And before I talk further on analytics, Sweata, what I really suggest HR professionals is to look at how they mature in terms of the HR business partnering. To me, there are three categories of that business HR partnering maturity. The first level is they follow the conversation of a business. They just follow. The second category is they contribute to the business conversations, which means if they're in the meeting, they also contribute to the discussion. The third category of HR business leaders are they lead the conversations, which means they know the numbers, they know the business, they know what they're really talking. They come with data and meaningful insights. So that's where I think you have to use your analytics, connecting to the business and able to talk in the business language. So that becomes more value addition. And then comes your tools, which will enable you to get those insights.
Thank you so much. So we have got a question from Rajiv Sen. Do you feel, apart from business orientation and talent orientation, influencing the key or right stakeholders to create a buy-in is a major task ahead for HR in the coming times? If so, how we will go about it to create a championship mindset?
That's a brilliant question. I think there are three skills apart from the functional skills. I really think that any professional need to have, especially in the HR community. There are three important skills you need to have. First one is the influencing skills. The second is the navigating skills. And third is the conflict management skills. I see a lot of people struggling in that. And these skills are becoming more and more important, critical in the HR roles. Because if you have to influence your business leaders, that means you need to have the business knowledge. Second, the navigating skills. Navigating skills means there are three elements in a navigating skill, just for your knowledge. The first aspect in a navigating skill is you need to know where to push. Second, you need to know when to push. Third, you need to know how to push. And you need to know who are the stakeholders you need to do this. So people are talking about, oh, you need to have a persistency, you need to have a passion to do that, you need to have all this, but more and more, you need to know when to push, how to push, and where to push. That is navigating skills. And for you to navigate, as I mentioned earlier, you need to understand what kind of environment you're working. I said, yeah, categorized organization in three types. Is the organization you're working is a rock, pebble, or a sand? That's how you need to decide in terms of how do you navigate across. Because there are business leaders who always say that it is my way or highway. There are business leaders who will have patience to listen to you. There are business leaders who will come and coach you as well. But you need to know what type of business leader you're dealing with. And that's the navigation skills are very important. And third, I mentioned the conflict management. It is a competitive world. There are a lot of conflicts happening within the organization. There's a power politics happens at the top. But you as a HR leader, how are you balancing that power politics at that senior level? Not really taking either of the sides. How do you really balance those power politics? And how do you really drive that excellence to the organization? It is not an easy job, believe me. And that's what I have a huge appreciation for HR professionals. But are you there and are you becoming one of the respectable HR professional in your organization or in your company? That is a differentiator.
Correct. Thank you so much for that. It is about balancing that we need to do as a foremost in our role that we play in any organization. Going to the next question, Kunal Datta is asking, when organization is going through transition, where the old timers in the organization have a different set of motivators, and the newcomers, especially new generation from premier colleges, have different set of motivators. How do we align?
That's always kind of a challenge, not only to the HR professionals, but also to the business leaders. When the business leaders have an agenda to drive. So I think what is important is when you're driving a transition or a transformation, you should look at slowly seeing that the change is seen, but not felt. So one of the component for a HR leader or a business leader is how are you driving a change where people are seeing it, not feeling the change. And when people feel the change, they resist, whether it is old or new. So you are a business leader or a HR leader, you need to do a small pilots and small checks, pulse checks, to see that people are slowly seeing the change in a positive way, and so that they join towards the benefits and make the change happen, not people feeling the change. The moment people feel the change, as I mentioned, they start resisting, because every employee is looking for what's in it for me. What benefit am I gaining out of it? Am I going to get promoted? My scope is going to increase? What is that things which really, help them? So you need to really be very careful in terms of, and that's what I keep telling, the whole navigating skills are very, very important. So you need to be a kind of a person who is taking a balanced view. If you are a change agent where people see you, not that you are driving your agenda, right? People will listen to you. If people will sense that this person is coming with a selfish agenda or some agenda which is going to benefit he or her, people will start resisting. So it is important to keep that, the change very transparent and clear. That becomes everyone's agenda, not your agenda. It can't be a HR project. The moment people see that it is a HR agenda driving some change in the organization or a business agenda, people will resist. So that is where I keep emphasizing, how do you learn the influencing skills? How do you learn those navigating skills? How do you learn conflict management skills? These are different from your functional knowledge. Your functional knowledge only will take you to an X extent. If you have to become a senior HR CHROs, that means you need to build these qualities beyond your functional knowledge. You need to have these skills. You need to be an effective communicator, not a speaker. People get confused between effective communicator versus a speaker. You don't need to speak great English. You need to be communicate in simple language where people get influenced with what you're saying. People are able to understand what you're saying. So these skills become very, very important for you to really, really passionately do anything in terms of driving that change.
Thank you so much for that. Going on to the next question, I think it has already been answered. What Somnath is asking us. As you said, that understanding people is the most important factor. So what makes us a good people's person? And I think you've already answered that in
Just
terms
to-
of having.
Yeah, I think if you have to be a people's person, the first important thing is respect. Irrespective of the level you are, we as a human beings, a child as well wants respect. We abuse sometimes as the anger and scold them. But understand as a humans fundamentally, and this is what I keep telling people, you don't need to study psychology, guys. You don't need to study psychology. Don't talk in big terms. Be simple, good human being, and be a respectful human being. People make mistakes. Don't shout at them. This is another bad culture I see. People are making mistake means first you be happy that means someone is working in the organization. Because people who work make mistakes. We all are human beings. I see very senior leaders shouting in front of 100 people, disrespecting in front of the colleagues, and I don't know what culture they bring in. So be a respectable human being. Respect others. Respect your peon. Respect your security guard in the office. Respect everyone, because everyone is human being. They're doing their job and the role is they're paid for. You are not a god. You are not sitting as a business leader. Doesn't mean that you have a decision power. That means you are not the only deciding factor. So that way I have seen senior leaders, guys, I'm telling from experience, I worked with very tough leaders, but those tough leaders, when they don't have the job, no one even calls them and asks how they're doing. When they call them, people even don't pick their phones. And that life is useless life. So fundamentally, for a people person, people have to love to work for you. They'll go an extra mile for your leadership qualities because you're a good human being, because you are working for their good. You're not working for your promotion. When the leadership is not about promoting yourself. Leadership is not easy because you have to promote and take care of the people working in the organization for you. That's when people will love to work for you. You don't need to worry about retention. Those leaders who will work for, worry about the people retention is people don't know how to manage and respect them and appreciate them. When bad things happen, you take the credit. When good things happen, give that credit to them. That is leadership. That is human. So that's where people, usually what happens is when the leadership meeting happens, the boss puts a pressure on the leaders. They will go down and put pressure on their subordinates, and that percolates down. As a leader, you need to hold that pressure. That is your responsibility. You don't need to push that pressure down. You need to constantly be a motivator. You have to constantly be an inspirer to the team. That is people-focused leader.
True. And then we have Onindo asking us, so in this change process, do you suggest aggressiveness or assertiveness?
It depends on, right, what you're trying to drive, right? Every change may not just work in aggressive.
Right.
So you need to balance that, where you need to be really, assertive, where you need to be aggressive. And sometimes, right, the organization lose patience because the senior leader think I need to make this drive in 1 year's time. And remember, you HR leaders, you have experienced when a new CEO or a CFO or a senior leader comes in, what the first time if you see in the current world, They just remove the existing guys and they bring in their own A team. Why that is happening more often? Because simple answer is not the existing folks are not can't deliver, because the patience to convince them takes longer time. The trust factor doesn't exist, right? And that is happening more and more often in various companies. When a senior leader comes, entire leadership will change. So it is important for you to be very careful in terms of how you really look at, the aggressiveness or assertiveness. There is a passive aggression. So you need to use those techniques based on what kind of people you're dealing with. So that is the reason I keep telling anyone that when you join an organization or leading an organization, first understand what kind of people are there in your team. Who are your guys who will drive your agenda? Who are the guys who will pull you back? Who are the guys just sitting on the border and saying that, let me see which side is the majority? So you need to assess and then apply. There is nothing like a black and white thing which will say go aggressive, be assertive, or be passive. There is nothing. It depends on every individual situation.
Thank you so much for that. And we will take one more question, which is again from Rajiv. And he's asking us, working with lean structure is an observed trend. What do you feel the HR professionals will do to fit into the change management? So I think it's relating to the role itself.
Yeah, so I think it is not about lean structure or you have a large team structure, right? It is all about the quality of people in your team. That's important. I see large teams still can't deliver because they don't have a passionate or skillful team. And when people look at headcount, right? So some function, I have seen leaders talking about, I have 1,000 people team, I have a 500 people team. That is only headcount to me. What one have to focus is from a headcount to skill count. What kind of skill resources are there? Right? This is a classic example, the Pandavas versus Kauravas. Right? It is not about how many people you have, but move away your mindset from a head count to skill count. What skilled people do you need for you to succeed? Make that assessment first. Right? Do you need people with a lot of historical knowledge? Do you need people who are futuristic thinkers? Do you need people who are very aggressive in terms of technology? But you need a mix of all. Balance that mix. You as a leader have every right and opportunity to create your A team. I call it the ACE team. So you need to look at what is missing, those competencies. What are the missing competencies in the team? That makes a difference.
Thank you so much.
I hope answered.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for considering the hour to spend with us. And with that, sir, I would request you to give us those final moments and wisdom of knowledge that we would want to end the day with.
Final wisdom. So I think one thing it's very important is that you have to really be a focused leader. The biggest challenge in the current times is the distraction. Where is the distraction coming from? The distractions are coming from everywhere. Whether it is a social media distraction, whether the distraction coming from our competitors, distraction coming from our colleagues in the office, there is a distraction coming from kind of how the world is evolving, right? The biggest challenging, whether you're a student, you are just starting your careers, or in your mid-career or a senior career, what is happening is the current world is a distraction. So one advice I have for everyone is try to manage those distractions mindfully. And this 24 hours is the time everyone have. Instead of wasting your time and getting into those distractions, divert your focus areas into doing some meaningful work, which is helping you as a professional to grow, which is helping you as a human being to be more mature. Grow as a matured human being, which means any challenge comes your way, you'll able to learn to deal with. When you're able to deal with those challenges, you will be an inspiration for many people, where you can go and guide them. You can teach them. That is the most satisfaction. At the end of your career, it is not about how much money you made, what position you led. At the end of the day of your career, it is all about how respectfully you have led your professional career, how meaningfully you have contributed to the society, how meaningfully you contributed to your colleagues, how your colleagues look up to you. And I'll give my classic example. I said at the age of 33, I become the global director. I'm at 45 years age right now. I lead the entire APAC organization for Boston Scientific. I have my friends, my ex-bosses who comes to me for advice. I have created and collaborated environment where not only at home, at your office or your ex-colleagues, how they reach out to you for advice. Be that sounding board, be that good human being. Doesn't matter whether you're HR professional or a business leader. These are just fancy titles you're just making money to. But at the end of the day, keep reminding yourself, we all have those 24 hours. We all have that great, beautiful life. And people are looking up to us. Our families are looking up to us. Our colleagues are looking up to us. And we need to maintain that respectful life. And that gives me more meaningful satisfaction. And that's how I have been passionate about everything I do. And that's where gives me a lot of satisfaction. I travel across the world. I just came 1 hour back home from a 2 days conference in Bangalore. I speak in global forums. I'm on the global advisory boards. But I don't feel tiredness. I still come here and I talk for 1 hour. I can talk for another 1 hour too, because what drives me is my passion towards developing people, my passion towards sharing knowledge. That drives. It is very easy to come and say, oh God, 2 days I did all my tiring travel. I can just give an excuse to Abhijit and Sweata. Oh, I need rest. I can't do it today. But I reached home at 4 o'clock. I took rest for 1 hour and then up at 6 o'clock to talk to you guys. Believe in yourself. It is not easy. Try to make things simple. Don't make life complicated. Be a problem solver, not a problem creator. Be proactive. Don't be reactive. Right? And in one of the biggest challenges in organizations is people do a lot of follow-ups. Why should people follow up for the things which you commit? 80% of the organization spends on following up for others, whether following up for someone to join a meeting, following up someone to chase that you ask to deliver because you need to deliver to someone else. If people are chasing you, that means you are not a committed professional. You are making commitment to deliver something to someone. Go back and tell them that you can't negotiate a new time tag. That is respect for others. That is respect. Have that respect through actions. That is more important. Just talking is not enough. So 4 things I leave the thought with. Be a proactive person, not reactive. Don't let someone follow up on the tasks which you committed. Also, be a problem solver, not a problem creator. Believe me, no one will come to you if you are a problem creator. People will run away from you. If you're a problem solver, people will appreciate you. And other thing which I've seen in the companies is a lot of people, when someone is asking for help, you will say that I'm very busy. I don't have time. But you waste time smoking with your friends, have time to have a coffee or a tea, and you waste your day. and then evening you sit to complete your work. And when someone is asking for help, you say that you're busy. Believe me, if someone is coming to you asking for help, which means they are trusting you that you can help. If you can't help, divert that person to the right person who can help them. But that's a golden opportunity you will miss by denying to help someone. Remember that. I don't know how many of you on this call are at various stages of your careers, but believe me, what took me where I am, I don't tell myself a successful person, but still, whatever I do passionately. People respect what I do. People want me to interact with me is because I do with the right intentions. And that all matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this 1 hour of developmental note that we have created for our role. And at the same time, how do we work with data? Now, with that, I would request everyone to switch on your camera so that we can take a group photograph with Sudhir sir and keep it with us as an archive.
I hope I made sense to all of you, and happy to, I'm on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me anytime.
Definitely.
So yeah, I hope it helped whatever I shared. Most of the stuff you might be knowing it. The challenge is the execution. That's the key.
That's right. So I would request the NHRD coordinator as well to switch on your camera and let us know when we are done. What about others? Abhishek, you're still again? Okay. Great to see you after a long time. And Eid Mubarak to everyone who's here. Have a great evening celebrating Eid with your friends. Also, it's Akshay Tritiya. Warm wishes, oodles of wealth, oodles of prosperity to family, friends, and organizations we are contributing to. So at the count of 3 to 1, I would request the chapter coordinator to take a picture of us. Oh, Shweta is also here. Shweta, please take a picture of us. Lot of comments coming in as well. We have Juma saying some very nice, kind words. Thank you so much for that. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening ahead till we meet again for the next episode, number 9 of season 5 of HR Speak. Thank you so much, sir. We are honored to have you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure is all mine, and I wish you all the very best. And do great. Do great to yourself and do great to others.
Absolutely.
Both are important.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Have a
great
wonderful
evening.
weekend.
Bye.